Hi,
That's a
Troy
new.
Love.
Hi there.
It's a new thing. Yes, they started, but and I appreciate it, but I'm sure people were recording that didn't know they were being recorded, etc.
Hmm.
So this is being recorded. Those of you joining, please ask questions in the Q&A. You can ask questions anonymously, but you will not be seen, on the screen. So this is your opportunity to ask Troy questions. He does a lot of great work around attachment wounds, and how those get poked and how we can look at them differently. So that's helpful. He has the betrayed partner group on Thursdays that he at 11 a.m. Pacific time on alternating Thursdays. And then every Friday, he's got a guys group on Friday mornings that it really talks about attachment wounds. So, and how we work through and heal them. So,
Yes, and shame. Like,
and shame. Okay. So we have a question.
awesome.
My husband does the least possible and complains about the work he needs to do. I know he's not a good recovery sign, or I know that's not a good recovery sign, yet I feel stuck. He's made big progress in his behavior, but still exhibits negative behaviors and is not connecting to me and doing positive actions. Can you comment?
So, I have lots of comments. um, One of the things that I tell Tammy is that everything that we say here is just our own opinion. Please don't take it as medical advice, and we do absolutely encourage you to follow up with a qualified licensed therapist in your area to who can interact with you and get a little bit more to the story than what we know based on these little questions. But so what you're seeing is some red flags. It sounds like he has made some progress, which I am really happy to hear. But it also seems like there's a long way to go. One of the things that's interesting in recovery is that oftentimes at the beginning, when a person finally has maybe got a handle on not numbing their behavior anymore, maybe they've been able to go 90 days clean or a little longer than that. What tends to happen is that the whole reason why they were numbing those attachment wounds that we talk about, the loss, neglect, rejection, abandonment, those wounds start to come up, and the way that we had been using to numb those behaviors we're not using anymore, but we actually haven't developed any other tools to be able to manage that. And so we can we can be, I can only speak for myself. When I stopped the numbing behaviors, I became really angry. And there were times that my wife said, sometimes I wish you would just go look at porn because you were a lot nicer than you are right now. She didn't mean that way, but I was really angry because I hadn't learned how to manage that pain underneath. So there's a part of that, especially if he's early on in recovery, he still has a lot of tools to learn, like a lot of skills that he has to learn about for him that hopefully he'll be able to learn, and that's why we encourage the 12-step meetings and keep coming back and all of those kind of things, continuing with a therapist so that he doesn't just get focused on, oh, well, I'm sober now, so I'm good to go, because that's just one small piece of recovery. Um, and it also sounds as you're saying that he complains about the work. Well, it is hard. The thing that I've learned about brain plasticity is that when we are doing things that are hard, that's actually positive because it's a sign that we're learning something new. And our brain is now having to kick things in gear and learn something new, which is great. But none of us like that until we can maybe change our mindset and say, okay, this is going to be hard for a while, but I'm willing to lean into this because the outcome is going to be worth it. So that's part of what might be going on with him is that he's learning. He may still be doubt, not having as much hope that this is going to actually come to anything. There might be a lot of
Mhm.
shame and fear on his side for that. And honestly, all that you can't do anything about. You can have some understanding and some empathy for. The only thing that you can do, and Rob's book on prodependence is really great about that, is having some empathy for that, but also doing your own self-care about what can I do to care for me, what can I do to not take that personally, what can I do to remind myself that I am worthy of love and belonging, even though he's complaining and he's not doing the work, and what can I do to breathe into that belief that I am enough, and how can I remind myself of that? What support do I have? Who can I reach out to and talk to that helps me feel like I'm not alone in this situation? And focusing more on the parts that you can do something about, because if we just fixate on what he is or isn't doing, we will be miserable because we are powerless to do anything about his behavior.
Yeah, and it's such a this is such a typical question because I think this happens often. And just like Troy was saying, all of the negative stuff that we've been avoiding in our addiction, is now coming to the surface. But it doesn't mean you have to accept unacceptable behavior. And I had a couple of thoughts about like some things you might be able to try. And these are, again, all, as Troy said, these are suggestions. But I wonder if you say, when you exhibit those negative behaviors, I feel like your recovery isn't important, or that our relationship isn't important, or whatever. I'm making this up, obviously, but that was one thing. I think another thing is, I hear this is really hard for you, but it encourages me for our relationship when I see you working on the things that will help you change. It gives me hope. And I think both of those could be true. And but you using statements that share how you are seeing things, how you are feeling, may help de-escalate a situation, but also may validate that you recognize that it's hard for him, but it's also really hard for you to be in this space. So I mean, a lot of it is communication, but it's not, you don't have to accept unacceptable behavior. So if he's venting and blaming you or whatever, that that's not okay. It's I hear this is difficult for you. I encourage you to talk to your sponsor about that or whatever, and then come to the Betrayed Partner drop-in group on Wednesdays at 12:30 Pacific time, and there's another one tomorrow morning, and get support from partners that have the same kind of situation. So other questions, please pop them in the Q&A. We love to have questions. So
Yeah, I've been trained in the work of Sue Johnson, which is emotionally focused couples therapy. I also have had training from the Arbinger Institute, which they do. They work primarily with businesses, but they have written some books called The Anatomy of Peace and Leadership and Self-Deception, and those two paradigms actually fit really well together. One of the biggest takeaways for from the Arbinger Institute is, how am I seeing the other person? Um, and they really, it's interesting, especially when we're in the field of sex addiction and how we objectify people in the field, but we can also do that as a partner. One of the ways that the Arbinger Institute takes a look at things is, have we turned somebody into an object rather than kept them as a human? Um, and when we turn them into an object, what it does is it gives us permission to treat them badly and not feel bad about it, because we don't actually see them as human in our brain, because we've seen them as a tool that we can use to get what we want, or we see them as an obstacle in our way that's preventing us from moving forward, or we see them as irrelevant. It actually gives us permission to treat them badly and not feel any bad about ourselves. We feel actually justified in the way that we treat them. And I see that a lot in partners, in couples, where we do end up objectifying and not seeing the humanity both in ourselves, because shame does that for me, like tells me I'm not worthy of anything, but also does that for the other person. And then that keeps us in this spiral of conflict and nagging and trying to rescue and escaping as we are dealing with the pain that both of us are dealing with for the person who just commented, the pain of betrayal, that wound of betrayal, that fear of loss. That's a pretty profound, and it keeps us in the cycle. Sometimes we do tolerate bad behavior because we're hoping that it will get better, and sometimes we turn that other person into an object in hopes that maybe it will get things faster. But in the end, it's the humanity, me seeing my humanity, me seeing your humanity, me talking about my feelings and how you impact me, listening to how my behaviors impact you, and how we can come together, that really brings us together, which is hard, especially early in recovery, especially when the addict maybe doesn't have that much emotional intelligence and doesn't even know what they're feeling. So it's a journey. This is not easy. That's why we have these groups, so that we can provide tools and help you not feel so alone. I'm hoping that we're not just. I don't want you to feel blamed. It's
Mm-mm.
part of it is like, what part is mine? I got to take ownership for the part that's mine, and what part isn't mine? I'm not going to take ownership of the part that isn't mine.
And I think it's really easy, in those situations to go, the other person doesn't understand that, I'm all alone in this and they just don't understand me, and on some level that may be true. So having the ability to be vulnerable and say, when you do, when I see this, I feel, that takes the first step towards being vulnerable and changing that. You talk about, this cycle, and I always go, yeah, it's the dance, and it's a dance, but it's not a good dance. It's the same dance that we keep doing, and we're both get left going like, here I am all alone, nobody understands me, versus, we're doing this and wow, I feel really supported, and I'm glad we're doing this, this movement together. So
Yeah.
okay, so we've got some more questions. Historically, I've been pretty close with my sister. It's just been me and her left. Our brother died of a drug overdose a few years ago. Oh, I'm so sorry for both of you. I was in a national news a year ago, and when I was considering working with reporters, I went to my sister to ask her support and help. She was awful to me and told me I was on my own. I went ahead with the efforts, and the news reports accomplished what they needed to. However, I didn't handle the stress and rejection from my sister very well, and relapsed and ended up in treatment. I have many months sober now, but I'm still on the outs with my sister and a couple of other friends. I'm hurt by her past treatment of me and have realized that I can't rely on her. I'm shocked by the treatment of me by a couple of friends and have withdrawn to process, but that creates loneliness. Any suggestions?
Oh man. Number one, I'm sad about your brother, and I'm sad about your sister too. What you are describing is a rejection wound, and a betrayal wound too. These wounds aren't just black and white; they kind of mush together. But you're describing a rejection wound and a betrayal wound. So you had this level of trust with your sister, and you were looking to her for some support, and then when you needed that support maybe the most, you got the opposite reaction of what you were hoping for. And then that leads to you being pushed away and being told you're on your own, buddy. You're going to have to do that. So that wound of rejection and that wound of betrayal is really painful. I often say it's not the wound itself, though, that is the problem. It's the stories we've come to believe about ourselves. And over the course of our lives, when all these wounds, attachment wounds, have been created, we've also woven into our nervous system core beliefs about ourselves. And I'll tell you one of them for me. Abandonment is one of mine. And the core belief that is associated with that is that nobody will show up for me when I actually need them. And that core belief has been there from the moment I was born. I totally know it's false. I recognize that it is faulty. And yet, man, it gets triggered a lot, especially with some of the things that are happening in my life recently. It gets triggered. That core belief is what sets me up to then withdraw, pull away, not reach out, because I'm like, why would I do that? No one's going to show up for me when I need them anyway. It's that core belief that is woven into your nervous system that gets activated. So even the thought of what has happened can activate it, and activates your nervous system, and your nervous system does what it was designed to do when it senses that you're in danger. And then we typically have one to two pretty predictable reactions. We either pull away and shut down as a way of trying to deal with this, or we become very agitated and angry and get in people's faces trying to, like, no, you can't do this to me. And it sounds like for you, like, that you withdraw in that process. Also, like, I hear that you returned to some of the ways that you knew how to deal with that pain in the past. And I'm hoping that you don't shame yourself for that. And I'm hoping that you can have some self-compassion for, I don't know what your drug of choice is. It doesn't matter to me. I don't know when you learned how to use that drug of choice as a way of coping, but that was also wired into your brain a long time ago as a way of, when I'm rejected, when I'm betrayed, this is how I numb the pain. I love that you figured that out, went back to treatment. You've been working on that, and you're reaching out today, man. So I'm proud of you for that. And I also hear the loneliness. There is sadness around that. And so what you've learned is that your sister might not be one of those dependable people. I often talk about the list of 12. Who is on your list that you can begin to reach out to? And I just shared this with a client yesterday. He's like, 12? 12? I only think of one person. I'm like, okay, well, that's a start. And then she started to think, oh, okay, well, I got this person and this person. And about 5 minutes later, she had like 6 people on her list. And I'm like, when's the last time you reached out to any of those people? Oh, I haven't reached out to them at all. Wonderful. Let's start making goal. Let's reach out to one of those people every day. Just, she goes, do I have to call him? I'm like, well, I would love for you to call them, but if it starts with a text, then text them. If it starts with a voicemail or whatever. But let's begin to reach out and be real with some of these people. Start to figure out, who can I trust with my sadness? Who can I trust with my feelings of rejection and that, because you have had some friends and your sister who did not respond the way you were hoping. So who can show up for you? And be careful of the impotent one, who's a shadow of shame that says, well, nobody will show up for you. And there's nobody who's going to be there for you. That's one of the shadow's way of trying to contain your pain and figuring out, well, who can? Is there some support groups I can go to? Are there people that I've met along my recovery journey that I can reach out to? Are there people in 12 Steps that maybe have done some of their own work that I can reach out to? Like, who is there that I can reach out to? And start to challenge those core beliefs a little bit and lean into the discomfort, because it is going to be uncomfortable, and let people love on you.
So well said. So many great things. And I thought, like, a couple things. First of all, it feels like, your sister, it was very conditional. If you do the wrong thing, in her opinion, then you're on your own, rather than I'm voicing my concerns about you doing this, but I'm going to love you anyway. And then I have this really, she lost her brother too. And now she's lost two brothers really because, of distancing. And I thought, the brokenness that she must be experiencing, and she doesn't have recovery tools, probably. Making this up, but if she doesn't have, you've got recovery tools and recovery people to lean into. I love what Troy was talking about, of having 12, because having just one, they're human. They're for sure going to fail you at some point. Every human, the people closest to me, and I'm sure I do the same thing to them, if truth be told, but every human's going to fail me at some point, and I them, because I'm human and I'm going to misstep or whatever. I'm also thinking that these friends of yours, like if they're fair weather friends, again, there's something about them that they're not in a place where they can be supportive for the long haul and really be friends. My true friends, like people can do what they want to do. And if they do things, that I think wasn't the best choice, it doesn't mean I don't care about them or love them or support them, and I'll be there if I have to help pick up the pieces. And I won't go, I told you so. I mean, I promise. But it's one of those things where, I'm kind of wondering how safe your friends were in the, like, I'm not sure that they would have really been on your list of 12. So I'm inviting you, like Troy said, start making the list and reaching out to other people. I'm glad you're here, and we've got a group tomorrow and another one on Friday, including Troy's, that are for men. So it's a great place to connect, and you can meet more people that, maybe can be on your list of 12. So, okay, next question. I believe my husband has not fully disclosed all his acting out behaviors. I feel he is holding back for fear that I may be horrified that I will end any further work on reconciliation. How can I be sure that he has fully disclosed both of my safety knowledge, and so he can progress in his healing without keeping secrets? So what I'm reading is you didn't do this with a therapist or with therapists. So and a good disclosure is not going to be that he discloses all his secrets to you in gory detail that you can never get out of your head. So it sounds like, I called this I'm doing surgery on myself at home rather than going to the surgeon who can help me really do, treat what needs to be done. So I'm concerned for you both, that if you are not working with qualified therapists to have a proper therapeutic disclosure, that the process won't go well for either of you. That's my concern. Troy, what are you thinking?
I always tell the partners that you do have a sixth sense, and oftentimes that sixth sense gets gaslighted. So don't believe it. So you may be picking up on something that you may be picking up that he's scared to tell you something because he's afraid of how you're going to react, and that may be legit. And like Tammy said, we don't know exactly what your process has been, whether or not you have worked with a therapist or not. Um, and that, to be honest, there is no guarantee. Even with lie detector tests and all that stuff, there is no guarantee that the person has been honest fully. What I'm picking up on in your question is you want to be safe, and you also want to be able to know that you guys can move forward without secrets. And he might be afraid that you are going to hear something he is that is going to be the end of it all. And every couple is different, to be honest. But I know that there was one couple where the wife was able to say, look, I think I can wrap my head around pretty much anything unless you've had sex with another man. If you've had sex with another man, I'm telling you right now, there is no way that I'm going to be able to work through that. And we're going to probably have to file for divorce. But everything else I think I could work through. It's not going to be easy, but I think I can work through. And the principle around that is, well, what are your bottom line behaviors that you can and cannot tolerate, and have you shared those with him? in a way that says like, these are the things. So I need to know if this has happened. I really do need to know. And if it hasn't, great. Then I'm still committed to working with you. And yeah, it's gonna suck, but we're gonna work through this because I care about you. These are things I need to know in order to be safe. Hopefully, you do have a qualified therapist who's been trained in the full disclosure process that can help you with that. Um, Part of that is like I hear empathy in what you're saying and in expressing that, like, honey, I know the sense that I get is that you're holding something back because you're afraid it's going to be too much for me. And 99.9% of the wives that I've ever talked to are like, I can handle the truth more than I like. You think I'm going to freak out about the behavior? Don't lie to me. I can't handle being lied to. And
Yes.
you'll tell them that, you'll tell him that a million times and he still won't believe you, but that's his stuff. But really, again, just saying with empathy, saying like, look, this this is what I need in order for us to be able to reconcile, and something's just not sitting right. uh, can you help us? Can you sit with me and help us figure out what that is? Because I you matter to me, this relationship matters to me. This is what I need to feel safe.
She did add, my husband has disclosed several sexual fetishes that he acted out with his Ashley Madison hookups. Is there any hope that he can return to monogamous, vanilla sexual relationships with me, or will he always be trying to scratch those fetish needs?
Hmm. Well, it honestly depends on what those fetishes are, and how much willingness he is to do some work around those. My belief is those fetishes are very much tied to attachment wounds and unresolved issues from the past, and how we can sort through some of those things. And the world of fetishes is very interesting because you'll talk to some therapists and they're like, well, that's just part of who that person is, and you just need to accept that that's part of their fetish. And then there's others who think, no, we can try to change that. So I can't give you a black and white answer. The question is, can we have a committed, intimate, wonderful sex life, not just sex life, but that's part of it, with openness and honesty. And can I trust him that he's going to be open and honest? And only he can answer that. None of us can answer that. And Stephen R. Covey says that the only way that you can really act yourself out of betrayal is by behavior. And I've used the analogy of the trust jar a lot of times on here. Um, the trust jar is empty. There's no trust in the jar right now, but we put a marble in the jar every day, and every day that he behaves in a way that's trustworthy is another marble in the trust jar, and it begins to fill up. Once you've been betrayed like this, I don't think it ever gets to 100% ever again. But it can get pretty full. And I think you can still have a pretty amazing, wonderful, cherished, laughing, intimate relationship. And I've seen it happen. Um, Even though it may be only 95% full. I But there was a lot of work, especially on the part of the husband, that made that happen. And that's the part. It's like I need to see it. Words don't matter a whole lot to me right now. I need to see it. Show me that I can trust you.
Dr. Rob did a great job on the Monday night webinar talking about dedicated and non-dedicated fetishes. So, I mean, it's a specific topic and there is, it's complicated. It isn't like oh, if this, then that, so I would invite you to look at that. That's on sexandrelationshiphealing.com under resources, and you'll see previously recorded webinars. But, he's a clinical sexologist and, can answer those kind of questions a little more deeply because he's had the training on dedicated, non-dedicated, and all of that. So in fact, he even used vanilla sex, that term on Monday night. So that's anyway. Okay, next question. As I look to join 12-step program, what are the key areas I should focus on when selecting the right one?
I love that. Okay. So there aren't as many 12 step for partners, but there are like quite a lot of 12-step group options for addicts. So one of them, most of the 12-step, except for SMART. SMART isn't a 12-step recovery, but the difference with that is that it doesn't, all the 12 steps use some kind of definition of higher power. And there are some people that just don't have a higher power and they have a really hard time with that. And so they may look up the SMART support group, which has similar recovery principles. So the first is, what is the 12 steps definition of higher power, and will they accept your definition of your higher power? Most of them do, but that's one of the things to look at. And then the second is their definition of what sobriety is, because there's Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, there's Sex Addicts Anonymous, there's Sexual Addiction Anonymous, there's Sexual Compulsions Anonymous, and so looking at what their definition of what sobriety is, because they all have different definitions of that. And so seeing if one of those is aligned with what your definition is. And then third, try them out. Go to several of them. See if you like one better than another. Because you may think, I really should go to this one. But then you go to another and you find out, wow, I really like that. One of the things to keep in mind, especially like with Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, is a lot of those meetings are co-ed. So that's another thing to take a look at is you may not feel comfortable going to a co-ed meeting. Your partner may not feel comfortable with you going to a co-ed meeting. So, and I wouldn't lie about that. I'd be pretty open about that. To me, there is some benefit to going to a co-ed meeting. There's also some risk to going to a co-ed meeting, but those are some of the things that I'd be looking at. Co-ed, not co-ed, what's their definition of sobriety, and what feels best for me. And so just maybe trying out several, doing your homework and figuring out which one really feels like a good fit for you.
And I would encourage you to go to multiple, because so for the 12-step program I go to, I had to shop for my home group because they all have their own personality. So even within, SLAA, you're going to, if you go to the, Tuesday night meeting over here and like they're going to have different personalities of, like who the people are. And even within a good meeting, every now and then, and it's probably me, but I just kind of go, well, I'm glad I'm here or whatever, but like that wasn't as good of a meeting or whatever. So I would invite you to go, 5 or 6 times and really see and check out different meetings, but look for, where do you connect? Not just where you don't connect, but where do I connect? What's meaningful for me, in this particular one, or are there people, that, I really related to that person. And what they were saying, or I liked what that person has. I like the recovery that person has. That would be a really big deal to me, is like, are they going in a direction that I want to go? So, okay, next question. My partner is SA, and we had discovery a year and a half ago. He stopped acting out. He only attends 2 group Zoom meetings a week, and we have no couples therapy. And he has tried 3 different therapists for a short time. Then he stopped as he felt he didn't connect. I have supported him since discovery, the other side of addiction, all his disorders, that the emotional, relational, mother enmeshment is leaving me in a relationship that is not meeting any of my needs. The last straw is he now no longer can say, I love you to me. If he was actively working with a therapist, I could see some light, but there's nothing. I'm struggling to find anything to stay for. He's always the victim. Is there help therapist for BP? Is that borderline personality or bipolar? Don't know, who have been in relationships with people or betrayed partners. Sorry. This is the problem with initials. Like I can think of 14 things so for betrayed partners who are in relationships with people who have these disorders in the UK. I also wonder what is wrong with me that I accept so little for this relationship. That's really key to this too. So
well, let's start with that. Um, that's shame right there. The shadow of shame that's showing up is the judge, and the judge is telling you that there's something wrong with you, and is probably giving you a list of all the reasons, all the things that are wrong with you. Uh, so when we look at Rob's prodependence model, there isn't anything wrong with you. You love this guy. You wanna care about him, and you're also wrestling with what about my needs and how do I get them met. So understanding that shame is hijacking some of your ability to maybe even have compassion for yourself and to have boundaries for yourself. Um, because some of this you may come to a place where you aren't okay with, and then you're going to have to make some decisions about what you would do when you come to that place, if that's what you're coming to. Um, I'm glad that he's still going to 2 group meetings a week. I'm really sad that he has come to a place where he cannot express his love for you. When I look at couples counseling, there are 3 A's that I, if they are actively happening, I will say that couple isn't ready for couples therapy. And the first is if there's active addiction going on. The second is if there's an active affair going on. And the third is if there's active abuse going on. I don't know if there is like the active addiction going on. I can't tell from here, even though it sounds like he may not be acting out, but he may still be in that addicted brain place. And so trying to do couples therapy at that point doesn't actually work very well, because we're talking with someone who's I'm talking to the addict brain. I'm not actually talking to the person with emotional intelligence who's able to take ownership of their behaviors and work through some of their stuff and have empathy for that. So couples counseling may not be, you guys may not be ready for that, based on just a little snippet that I'm getting. I'm also hearing from what you're saying that he's tried a couple of therapists and has stopped. I tell people that finding a good therapist is like finding a really nice pair of shoes. You may have to try on several pair. He may not be lying that they weren't a good fit. The question is he going to just give up now? Or is he going to go try to find another therapist who may be a better fit for him? Or is he been sucked into the impotent one who says, well, there aren't any good therapists out there and I'm just doomed for the rest of my life? And that's his own shame that's coming up. So we got shame going on with him, we've got shame going on with you, and shame hijacks relationships faster than anything else. Is there hope? Well, I always believe in hope. I don't think I would be doing this webinar if I didn't believe that there was hope. But is it hard work? Yeah, it is hard. At this point, where I would focus is on what are you going to do to take care of this broken heart of yours, and how are you going to find ways to practice self-compassion and find some support for you, and to help you not feel so alone, and to help you get some support during this time. And Tammy said it several times, we have several meetings for partners that hopefully you can attend. I know that you're on the other side of the pond, and so the time zones might be a little bit challenging, but we do offer those here for free. Um, and there's also some classes and stuff that they offer at Sex and Relationship Healing for partners that might be a place for you to say, like, look, it hurts. I'm going to do some of my own work right now, and hopefully he will do that. And as I'm doing my work, that automatically is going to change the dynamics of the relationship a little bit. And it may scare him, not that we do this as a manipulation, but it may scare him enough to say, wow, she's changing. I don't want to lose this lady. I really am wanting to do that. It may not do anything, I don't know, but at least it will do something for you to help you know that you are enough, that you are worthy of love and belonging, that you are worthy of being told that you are lovable and beautiful and all of that. And leaning into that and letting that resonate inside of you.
And there are therapists in the UK, so email me, Tammy, Tami at seekingintegrity.com, and I can hopefully help you find some names of people. But when I was reading it, it was like, you know, yes, he bailed on the therapist. You didn't say that they were qualified therapists. If it was a general therapist, they don't know how to deal with mother enmeshment. They don't know how to deal with, sex addiction. They don't. So I don't know, again, but I'm also going, and the list of what you're sharing, the disorders of emotional, relational, and mother enmeshment, addiction, like that's daunting. Like I'm just taking a step back. Like, well, I remember when I was, first getting into recovery, and it was so overwhelming, I'm glad he's going to 2 groups a week, but I often say, if you apply as much energy to your recovery as you did to your acting out and the fantasy and everything, you'll do great in recovery. In 12-step, we have half measures availed us nothing, and I really believe that. If I just think that this is magically going to come to me and I'm going to get better, it doesn't. But it's also really scary to think about having to deal with complex things. Mother enmeshment is lifelong. So that's been happening all his life, and having to come to terms with that, it is daunting, but there is help, there is hope. But I love what Troy was talking about, you getting support for you working through the shame that it isn't, well, shame is not helpful anyway, but he's a broken person. You love a broken person. Is he willing to work on repairs? I don't know, but you can get, support and strength, for you, and make a decision, whatever that happens to be for you. There is help and support. So, okay. Next question is, when I start to date, I want to from a place of being full and whole, but I often think I need to improve before I can date again, even when I'm getting much better at being self-supporting in all areas of my life. When do I know if I'm full and whole enough to date again?
Um, I love that question. So beware of the judge, shadow shame, who's telling you you're not perfect enough yet. You're not perfect enough yet, so you need to work a little bit harder before you're perfect. I don't know if you realized, but nobody out there is perfect. Um, and number one, I just commend you for being back in the dating world because that's really hard. So my love and support and honor and compassion to you for being out there. So watch out for the judge and also watch out for the politician. We don't talk a lot about that one, but the politician is all the one who says you need to be seen as. So the judge will tell you that you are flawed and defective and you're not trying hard enough. The politician will say you are flawed and defective, but don't let anybody know. And neither of those are going to be great if you take them along with you to your date. And hopefully your date isn't carrying their judge and their politician along with them either. So a couple of things. Who are your accountability partners? Who are your buddies? Who is on your list of 12? Who are you processing this with? Who are you saying, hey, look, my judge is out and saying, I don't think you're ready, dude or lady, to go on a date yet. So challenging that a little bit, and then practicing some self compassion. This is it's a mindset shift. What is the purpose of going on the date? There's lots of purposes for going on a date, but one of them I would imagine is that you're trying to find someone with whom you might want to spend the rest of your life with. And so this is as much about learning about them as they are learning about you, and you coming in all of your beautiful brokenness is what people love. Nobody wants to see like this fake plastic person. They it's what they love, and hopefully they will be vulnerable with you too, and you'll be able to learn, hey, that person just wasn't a good fit for me, or this person really was. And as you develop a little bit of a relationship of trust, you might disclose a little bit more with them. But honestly, the best thing that you can do is practice self-compassion, reminding yourself, I am worthy of love and belonging. I'm worthy of being loved. I'm worthy of being seen. I'm worthy of being noticed. And if you need help with that, have some other people remind you. Write it in your journal, stick it on your mirror. I don't have to be perfect to be loved.
Well, and I love what you were saying about like they might not be the right fit for me. No harm, no foul. You can just be not the right fit for each other. Both good people, you know. It doesn't have to go back to the shadows of shame where it's like, oh, if I only I was. No, it's just like you know that person is a good fit. I also really love what you talked about with your accountability people. Dr. Rob talks about having your dating posse that you're connecting with and before you go on a date. So you're really intentional, particularly in this area when people have struggled with you know, sex addiction, compulsivity. Then it's really easy to fall into the trap of ignoring the obvious things that would make that person not a good fit, you know, for you. So having the accountability people to make sure that you're looking at all angles can be really helpful. So, but yeah, I honor too. But when you said, you know, am I, you know, full and whole? I was like, oh my gosh, if I had to wait for that, you know, yeah, single forever. Cause like at some point we're good enough to start the process, and that's
Right.
all, you know, we're never
Let,
perfect.
let
Okay.
me say one more thing about
Yeah.
that. So,
Hmm.
you know, I use weight as an example. So, because it's the easiest for people to wrap their head around. Like, it may be true that you may need to lose some weight to be healthier. That may be true. So, the Western philosophy is you will be good enough when you've lost so many pounds. Eastern philosophy is you are good enough the way that you are today, and you need to lose some pounds. So it's that self compassion place. So there may be legit things that you need to work on, and I hope you continue to work on them. But come do it from a place of self compassion, and not from a place of I can't connect, I can't date until I have reached these things, because that will hold you back, because that's shame based. But be honest and open. I'm working on these things and continue to work on them. We will be working on that stuff till the rest of our days. So,
Yes. Hopefully, I mean, those of us that choose recovery are always working on these things. You know, I don't want to be stuck. I don't want to be the same version of me now and 2 years from now. So, okay. My porn addicted husband is showing some improvement with being present. He is showing up more frequently, but for shorter periods of time. When he is having a hard time, he struggles to remember his tools, resources, and has a hard time recognizing when he is struggling. He attempts to lean on me, and I tell him to reach out to others or to do his recovery work. Good boundaries. He has a hard time meeting my needs for safety, relapse prevention plan for different situations. I am not sure if he is being passive aggressively refusing or just doesn't understand what to do. I feel afraid and abandoned when he doesn't meet my needs. I respond with fear and anger, but that doesn't go well. What is the healthiest response from me for the both of us? Thanks for being honest with that. It does,
yeah.
this is what happens and it doesn't go well.
Thank you for being honest about that. I don't mean to laugh at you either. I'm laughing with you,
We're
even though
laughing with because
you're
I can
probably not
totally
laughing.
relate to
But
this. Yeah, yeah.
one of the things to understand is that if I were to take an addict's brain and brain scan the addict's brain, and then I were to brain scan a kid with ADHD, they would look a lot alike. Uh, they have a lot of similarities. Because what has happened is that the prefrontal cortex has been doesn't have enough dopamine because of the addiction. They flooded it with dopamine so much that it doesn't actually process the dopamine the way it's supposed to anymore. And so some of the stuff you're describing is like a kid with ADHD, and so they're learning how to manage these kind of things. So he's able to show up and be present. Huge plus. He's not able to sustain it very long. Awesome. Like that is understandable. And sometimes he forgets. That sounds just like a kid in the fourth grade who sometimes can't remember that he needs to do his homework, and he can't remember what he needs to do, and he's prompted. I get that's frustrating as a spouse who's married you to an adult. Like, it's not an excuse for the behavior, but that is the legitimate part of what's going on with this. And as he continues to improve, that will get better. One of the things he actually can do is meditate. If he meditated for 20 minutes a day, within about 6 weeks, he would probably see an improvement in that. But with somebody who has ADHD or who has an addiction, that's hard. There are some apps that teach you how to do that. There's several of them. So that might be helpful for him to do to help that. The part I'm hearing is that your attachment wounds are getting hit when he's not meeting your needs, and then you do respond with fear and anger. That doesn't go well. Um, in those moments when things are not triggering, and he's able to like look at you in the eye, so like have him like look you in the eye, make sure he's not doing anything else, like honey, like look me in the eye. When this is happening, this is the wound that gets stirred up for me, and this is what it feels like for me. And I really try to help people like speak in analogy or metaphor so that their partner understands what the wound feels like for them in a way that helps the other person understand it. So when I am trying to express my need and you're like spaced out, it feels like I'm on the moon and I'm calling NASA and nobody's listening, and I'm afraid that no one's going to come send the rocket for me, and I'm going to be left there and die on my own. Like that's that using that as a metaphor, they can start to maybe wrap their head around that a little bit and say, oh, that's really awful. And what I'm hoping that what they'll do is, because I'm talking about the wound, I'm not talking about, well, you forgot or you didn't meet my need, so you suck, and they immediately get defensive. I'm actually talking about the pain. What I'm hoping is that they will have compassion for that and say, wow, that's awful. I would never want you to feel that way. Well, I don't want to feel that way. This is what would help me. Can we try this? Or this is what would help me not feel this way anymore. And having that kind of a dialogue with the other person in a way that is not blaming the other person, but really talking about the pain and my need. Now, I'm sure that you've probably talked about your need ad nauseum. That you've said in there that he sometimes remembers and he sometimes doesn't. So part of that is saying, I don't know, honey, what you need to do to help remember that, but I'm hoping that as part of your recovery, maybe you can talk to some of the other guys and ask them, what do they do to remember? How do they show up? And maybe you can come up with like setting an alarm on your phone. I don't want to tell you how to do that. I just want to let you know that this is what it feels like when my need isn't met and it hurts. And I miss you. I miss the connection.
Yeah, well, and I really think that that's an important when it's not happening, because when you're both are able to use this part of your brain and not be in a reactive state, that's the time to have those challenging conversations. So there's not another question. So I have a question for you. You brought up earlier the disclosure, and you said the partner was like, my only bottom line that I cannot handle it'll be the end of our relationship is if you had sex with men. So my first thought is then the addict's going to not tell that, even though that is an important part of that. So how do you work through, if there really is, and here's the other thing for partners, it's challenging to go, well, if you ever do this, then I'm out of here. And it may be not. So having the partners have the support to really know what actually is a deal breaker. I'm out. I cannot possibly get past that. And then if something is a deal breaker and that was part of the disclosure, like needs to be part of the disclosure, how do you support the addict being brave enough to go, I need to do this for my recovery, even though I realize I mean, if the goal is I want to keep this relationship and now I know that's a deal breaker. So it feels like a challenging spot for both of them. How do you help
It,
navigate that?
yeah, it does. It really helped that they both were in therapy. They both have their own counselors. And that would be one of the things that I recommend when we're doing this, that the both partners have one. I also tell people that it usually takes anywhere from 4 to 6 months, and that may be overstating things, but it usually, for me, my experience is it usually takes 4 to 6 months to do a real full disclosure in the right way. The guy is working on his full disclosure, writing it down, reading it in therapy, taking it to group, reading it there, getting feedback as he's getting ready to present it. So that whole time he's working through some of his shame. So he's really in a place that he's able to present it. And I also I understand that part of the reason why they are doing the full disclosure is that they're trying to save their marriage. Um, totally get that. But the other part is this is part of helping them be liberated from their shame. At the same time, the partner is working with their therapist and helping and submitting the questions that they would like to have answered in the full disclosure, and working with their therapist about what is really, would I be able to tolerate that? Would I not be able to tolerate that? Um, and and I get that saying that may be something that would prevent them from being completely honest, and uh, we would need to talk about that, because that the problem is that without honesty, we're not going to move forward. So even though that's scary and it may hold them back, if that really is something that's happened, it can't be kept a secret, regardless of whether it is a deal breaker or not. Like, that's why we spend months and months working on this thing, because it can't be kept a secret. Because if I've done full disclosures where they kept secrets like that, and then 2 weeks later it comes out, and that was awful. And it will come out. The truth comes out. It just does. So, um,
And then it becomes a deal breaker because you would the whatever, but it also you've lied on the disclosure, so now nothing feels safe.
right,
So
right.
so yeah, it's challenging. Okay, so somebody said they were going to put in a question, but I don't see the question. So if you have a question, we've got like 2 more minutes. So happy to ask anything else. Just type it in the Q&A.
Yeah, while you're waiting, we do have. Tammy said I could say this last time, so I'll say it
Mm-hmm.
again. I do have a couples class that's coming up at the end of July. It's the Finding Peace in Relationships class. It's a 9-week class, and it's a series of videos, and then we actually have a live session every week for 9 weeks. I just put it in the chat. So we cover a lot of this kind of stuff. There are a lot of couples who come who are in recovery who have come in the past. And so if you want to check that out, I'd love to have you check that out.
So the question is, my husband, and thank you for that. So my husband revealed his addiction affair in the summer of 2019, relapsed in mostly the same fashion in March of 20, and has most recently last month threatened me that if we don't attend marriage counseling soon, he will resent me and ultimately act out and cheat again. Wow. Okay, I am resentful that he is resentful. I feel so much pain, anger, and fear that he will cheat again. My therapist even said that she trusts my intuition that I just can't trust. I would like some feedback.
All right. Well, he's not owning his stuff. So that the first part is, if he's, I guess I said it earlier, the 3 A's. Like, so what's the intention of marriage counseling? What is he hoping that will do? So I would be exploring that. What are you hoping that marriage counseling will do? The truth is, honey, I don't trust you right now. So I'm a little reluctant to do that. And the fact that you are telling me that if we don't go to marriage counseling right now, you're going to go cheat on me really actually doesn't make it feel safer. It really actually makes it feel less safe than more safe. Um, so that feels manipulative in my eyes, that he's using that as a way of doing that. And then the resentment. So let's say you actually were dragged to marriage counseling. There's going to be a heck of a lot of resentment going on that the therapist is then going to have to like wade through to like finally get to what's going on. So when we look at marriage counseling, what we need to have in order to do the work is safety. Safety has to be there. Safety for you to share your emotions, safety for them to share their emotions. And it doesn't sound like it's there yet. And so you may say something like, I am willing to go to couples counseling after I feel safe. And here's some things that would help me feel safe. After you've gone to some of your own individual therapy, and I've gone to some of mine, it really does help if you're willing to do your own work and not just say that he has to do his. Um, uh, After we do some of our own individual therapy, and I feel a little bit more stable, I would totally be willing to give it a shot. What I'm hearing you say is that you're actually like fluctuating about where you are in recovery, and that doesn't actually help me feel safe. So I need to see that you are going to meetings and you're checking in with your sponsor and you're doing those kind of things. That would actually help me feel safer. And then I'd be willing to do that, because this marriage is important to me, but I can't do it if I'm not safe.
Yeah, and I hear what you shared is, I mean, well, and I know that this is just a snippet. So I don't hear that he's going to meetings. I don't hear that he has a sponsor. I don't hear any recovery in any of that, because it's still like I get to blame you. You're going to be the reason I'm going to go act out, and gosh, to have that hanging over your head all the time, that his not acting out is dependent on you acting a certain way. That is so not fair, and not how recovery is. So, but I don't hear any. Has he read Out of the Doghouse? Has he attended 12-step meetings? Has he worked with a therapist? Does he have a 3-circle plan? I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff that I don't hear, and I know it's just a snippet, but I don't hear any of that. It's just, we need to go to marriage therapy. I can't tell you how many people call, and they've gone to marriage therapy for a whole bunch of time and it hasn't worked well, just because of the same things that Troy talked about, the 3 A's. But it's also, there's a certain period of time when both of you, I agree, you getting support, by somebody working through the trauma. This is trauma for you. So getting support, for you, him working on, why is he choosing to act out, rather than, having a conversation with you of like, I'm not feeling whatever. There's lots of adult ways to handle things, rather than I'm going to have a tantrum and I'm going to go have an affair. I think hold to your boundaries, listen to you say you do have a therapist. Your therapist said that. So I apologize. I just caught that again. So good for you. Trust your gut. Yeah. And I hope he gets recovery. I mean, it's so worth it for those of us in recovery. It is so worth it. But lots of resources on seekingintegrity.com. In fact, there's a quick self-test of where he's at, with, maybe he needs a higher level of help. So check that out. So we're out of time. We're past out of time. Thank you, Troy, for hanging in there. As always, thanks everybody for the great questions, and keep coming back. Join Troy's Thursday, 11 a.m. Pacific time group on drop-in group for partners, alternating Thursdays, and the guys group is every Friday. So you can find Troy multiple times a month on our site, sexandrelationshiphealing.com. Thanks, everybody. Bye.